So that's kind of how the trip started. So you got to have your mind in the right place, and then you just kind of start to settle in. But there are things that the road throws at you, right? Whether it's mechanical issues, whether it's that weather, like we just talked about, you are constantly adjusting.
Welcome to Grit Meets Growth, the podcast where we explore getting uncomfortable, making things happen, and creating a magnetic life. Now let's get after it.
We'll just dive right in, man. Last time we recorded, you were getting ready to go on your bike trip, and we started having a conversation about all the ways that a motorcycle trip just ties right back into the journey we're on, running businesses and trying to be strong parents, strong spouses, whatever. I would love to hear about the trip for one, and then find out what are some of the things that stuck on that trip that you were like, this was fantastic.
Yeah. And John, I think that there are so many things in life that when you have the right mindset, like they all transcend across all areas of your life, right? The work that you put in the gym transcends to your business, to your vacations. And so it all becomes, in my mind, all part of the same journey, right? And you start looking at all those components. The trip was a bucket list, right? Going to the Ozark Mountains in Arkansas has been a bucket list item of mine for a number of years for motorcycle trips. And it was really interesting on how it just all kind of came together with a group of buddies. We just kind of all, we were looking for what's our trip going to be this year? We've done Sturgis and then gone beyond for a week and done Montana and Wyoming. We've had talk of doing Colorado. Given everything that's going on in the world today, we like, Ozark seemed really reasonable. We've got a buddy that came from the East Coast, from Connecticut. He rode a couple of days, 3 days to meet up with us. Just good stuff, right? And if you haven't been to the Ozark Mountains in Arkansas, it's really weird when you start saying you've been to the Ozarks, people all of a sudden say Lake of the Ozarks. I was talking to a buddy of mine earlier today. He's like, oh yeah, I used to go to Lake of the Ozarks every year. My grandparents, had a place down there. Like, Lake of the Ozarks is fantastic in its own right, but went farther south to the Ozark Mountains and the Ozark National Forest. You haven't seen woods, forest like that. So green and lush and big hardwood and peaks and valleys. It's just big rolling hills. You're climbing, you're descending, you're climbing, you're descending. The one day we rode 106 miles and it was like 693 curves. So it's just I was speechless the entire trip.
That's awesome, man. For a non-motorcycle guy who's always been secretly jealous of anybody on a bike, I'm even more jealous. What were some of the highs and lows of the trip? Talk about that a little bit, man.
Yeah, when you do long distance motorcycle trips, you got to have your mind in the right place. We left Minnesota on that Saturday morning. It was 38 degrees. So you've got about every layer you can put on because you're screaming down I-35 at 38 degrees. The wind chill is, it's cold, and so that's kind of how the trip started. So you got to have your mind in the right place. And then you just kind of start to settle in. But there are things that the road throws at you, right? Whether it's mechanical issues, whether it's that weather, like we just talked about, you are constantly adjusting. you're looking, you're watching what's going on with your buddies, what's happening with their bikes. I was running, both my buddies were pulling trailers with their motorcycles. So in order to keep an eye on them and what's going on, I ride in the tail gunner spot, which is not normal for me, right? Normally I ride up in the second position, but here I am riding in the tail gunner and have to keep an eye on everything and make sure that the group is staying together consistently. And again, the road is throwing things at you. We had a couple of mechanical issues along the way. And quite frankly, that's all part of the fun and the journey of it. But he had a shifter linkage that we had to fix at our second morning of our trip. We're down in Missouri, and wiping the rain or the dew off the bikes that morning. And I said, "Hey, Brian, your shifter, has this thing been this messed up all day yesterday?" He's like, yeah. I said, "That's not going to work, man. That's going to give up the ghost if you keep riding that way." So we fixed that. Thankfully, there was an O'Reilly's right across the street. We were able to get some parts and things that we needed to fix it. Later on that day, he had a tire on his trailer go down. So here we are, screaming down the interstate. And all of a sudden I see gray smoke coming out from underneath his trailer. And there's four of us together at that point. Our buddy from the East Coast met up. So I'm in the back of the four of us, and he's my buddy Brian, whose trailer tire went down. He's in the second spot. So I go screaming by, pull up on him, give him the sign that he needs to pull over. He's got a tire down. Pull up to the guy leading, let him know what's going on. The other dude pulled over with Brian. By the time we circled back around, they were already working on repairing the thing, Again, all part of the journey.
There's so many good nuggets in there, man, that mirror life. Like I'm making notes here as you're talking. Like you talked about in the beginning, you got to get your head in the right place. Mm-hmm. Before you even start, you have to have your head in the right place where you're prepared for the fact that on the road, things are going to happen that are unexpected, that you didn't see coming. I think if we approach every day like that, knowing that every day is going to bring us things that are unexpected, whether we're on a motorcycle or walking into the office, it's the same thing. Try being a parent. It's that thing, right? All over the place. The ability to constantly adjust as things happen. You constantly have to adjust. We're coming off of a year of constant adjustment where everybody did this for an entire year. It's nice to think that now that the pandemic is ramping down, like, okay, we're not going to have to do that anymore. You have to do it every day. We always have to adjust all the time. And again, mindset is everything when it comes to that. You talked about just watching out for your buddies. That was one of the things I was most excited about when you started talking about this trip, was the idea of how you work together. And it's not a solo trip. You're out there with your buddies and you're watching out for each other. You have the hand signs to let each other know what's going on. The communication is key. I mean, there are so many things that you're talking about when you're talking about this trip that just light me up, because it's life. That trip on a motorcycle is life. That's it.
It is. And that's what's most enjoyable about it, right? Is really, and being in that mindset to think about it that way and enjoy those moments of challenge, right? And embrace them and know that they're only short-lived. We're going to get through it and we're going to be right back to the fun of it, right? And it's the same thing in life, right? Life throws a curveball at you. You just absorb it, deal with it, and move on, right? It's short-lived.
Was it, I think, and I know the answer to this, was it easier to go through the curveballs when you were with a team or with your buddies?
Oh, for sure.
Yeah,
absolutely. Because there's a support structure there.
Yep.
Right. And we all, everybody every one of us carries tools, right? We always carry tools on the bike with us. And we always joke that between the four of us, we have about every tool to tear down and rebuild an entire bike. But I don't need to carry every one of those myself because I know my other buddy's got that tool, so I don't need that. And the other one's got this, so I don't need that tool. Same thing with we camp, right? So each one of us has our place on what we bring to ensure that we're all comfortable around camp, right? We cook at camp, right? We kind of, we do a little bit of primitive camping, right? We're pretty much all tent camping, but we have as many of the amenities as we can, right? We cook breakfast usually every day at camp, make coffee, right? So got all the tools and everything that we need to be able to accomplish that.
That's one of those things too. Like you think about the weather and the breakdowns and all of those things that happen on the journey that are unexpected, but being prepared, like you almost expect the unexpected, right? You bring the tools with because I hope I don't need them, but I'm going to have them if I do. You have some buddies have this tool or that tool so that you don't have to carry all of them. That's huge, man. Like I think about the businesses that I've been in, and that's always part of it. I don't have to bring everything. I have to bring my part, and I have to show up with my part, and I have to be there when somebody else needs my part, but I don't have to do it all. And that's huge. Like just that part of that story is massively important because I think sometimes we think we have to do everything and we don't. If you put yourself in the right circle of people, you don't have to do everything. And it makes all of the challenges and all the adversity and all the everything that much easier to get through. Resilience is easier with friends.
Yep. The journey traveled with friends is easier and much more fun. Whether that friend is, your motorcycle riding buddy, or whether that friend is your spouse or whomever that friend is, life is better together.
And you brought up earlier, the idea that you can watch out for each other is huge. Like when your buddy's bike goes down, you're there to say, hey, you probably don't want to ride with it like that much longer. Let's fix that together and get you back to where you should be. And that's every relationship we have should be like that.
Yep. And I always, it's always a nice opportunity as we're preparing the bikes every day for a ride, you're wiping the dew off. It's always nice to have somebody put their hands on your bike and kind of look things over, right? So they're drying the dew off of your bike and they're looking for things that, loose bolts, things that aren't, right. Again, it's another set of eyeballs on things to make sure that you have the safest ride, the most enjoyable ride possible. There's many things in that transcended to life, right? Putting yourself, we talked about preparing. Well, you prepare along the way, right? The way I look at it is every corner that I'm going into, you put yourself in a position to be able to see as far through the corner as you can, see what obstacles are up ahead. Man, I've never seen so many dead armadillos on the side of the road as I did in Arkansas. And I'm thinking, I'm glad they're dead on the side of the road, because if I come around a corner and that thing's in the middle of the lane, it's not going to be pretty. But if you put yourself in a position early on going into that corner, you can see those obstacles should they come up.
Absolutely. And I think here's the other thing that I think about when you say that is there's so many times where we have this barrier to starting things because we can't see all the way to the finish line. We don't know what's coming around the corner. So we're not going to start, or we're not going to go into it because we can't see all the way to where we're headed, right? You're never going to see all the way to the end of the journey, all the way to your goal, to where you know exactly what every step is going to look like. But if you can get comfortable seeing a little bit ahead of where you're at and going around those corners and then making adjustments and going around some more corners, the journey is done a little bit at a time, even when there's armadillos in the middle of the road or on the side of the road. So when you got back, how long were you gone again?
We were gone. We were gone a week. Left on a Saturday, came back on a Saturday. We left here, it was 38 degrees. The day we came back, it was 100 degrees.
Did you feel refreshed when you got back? Because I think sometimes too, we get into this hustle and grind mentality where I'm going to work and we don't spend time taking bike trips or stopping to slow down enough to refresh. So I'm curious about that. Like, did you feel good when you got back?
Absolutely. Absolutely refreshed. And again, it's even along the way, right? That's, again, we're traveling distances. We're, on the way there and back, we're running 600 miles in a day. You've got to stop and refresh yourself, right? You've got to get off the bike. You've got to, especially when it's hot like that, you've got to make sure you're getting your fluids, right? You have to do those things. You have to take care of yourself as well. But yeah, spending a week doing what you love to do, seeing sights that this country has to offer, and the beauty that this country has, absolutely refreshing. Stop and smell the roses, I think, is what the line says, right? That my mom used to say to me when I was growing up. Stop and smell the roses.
It's hard. We get wrapped up sometimes in all the stuff we have to do, all the stuff we have to get done, all the things, right? And there's always going to be more work, and work is important, obviously. But that downtime, to force yourself to take that downtime, or not even to force yourself sometimes, but just to do it, it's huge. It is so important. And it's a good reminder for me, just listening to you talk about this, to do that. So,
and just unplug. Right. Just unplug. And that's, I tried to make a conscious effort to do that while on vacation, to just unplug, right? Enjoy the camaraderie and the conversation around the campfire at night, and not be on my phone, right? And looking at what everybody else is doing. Be in the moment, enjoy that moment, enjoy that conversation, enjoy what's going on in my life at that point.
That's a game changer. That is an absolute game changer. I remember a time when my kids were little, and I was recently divorced, and they were with me one night, and we decided we were going to go to a car show. And so it's dad and the kids. We're going to the car show, and we're walking through these beautiful cars, having a blast. The kids are little. They're probably like 8 or 9 at the time. And eventually one of them looks at me and calls me out. He's like, "What are you doing on your phone? Like, you said we were going to the car show." And it was that's a pivotal moment for me, where I'm like, you need to be in the moment. If you're at a car show, be at a car show. If you're at dinner, be at dinner. If you're wherever, be there. Turn stuff off. And we live in a society where we're constantly fed everything. There's always something to look at, something to distract us, something else we could be doing. But that ability, or that skill we can develop to be in the moment, it's hugely important. And it's hard, but if you can nail that, life's a lot better.
Yeah. And listen, we all have to work at it, right? There are those times where, it creeps in pretty easy. You have to make the conscious effort to do it. It's not natural, right? As you said, because we're bombarded with it all the time, right? It becomes habitual for us. Right. There are times where you're like, where you don't have your phone. You're like, "Where's my phone?" Well, why do I need it? Like, I don't need my phone right now. Right. Or you pick it up and you start looking at something, and you get completely distracted. You were going to look up, you were going to Google something because you were looking for an answer, but you get sucked into something else because you picked up your phone, and here a half hour passes by and you haven't done what you intended to do in the first place.
And like you said, a half hour passes by. Like, I complain all the time, and this is a sick complaint. I don't have time. I'm so busy, I don't have time. It's not that I don't have time. It's that I don't prioritize my time all the time the way that I should. So all of a sudden, when I don't have time, but I spent half an hour scrolling through Instagram or whatever it is, I had time. I wasn't intentional about how I used it. And that's the killer.
Absolutely. There's always those funny moments that happen as well. There are stories from every trip that come out, right? Somebody does something that, sticks with everybody. It rained when we were down there the one day. I mean, we had a day of, it started raining on Monday evening. It rained all Monday night, all day Tuesday, didn't stop raining until Wednesday morning. So Tuesday morning, we're brewing some coffee and kind of standing. We had a canopy over the picnic table, so we had some cover where we didn't all have to be hunkered down in our tent. And the campground actually had a rec center, where, a covered facility where you could spend some time as well. And I was going to check that out, and I bumped the leg of the canopy on the way out. On the one corner that all the water was pooling, right down my back. My buddy's like, the best part about that is you didn't even flinch. You just kept on walking. You just shrugged it off and kept on walking. What are you going to do? So what? We're all wet already. It's been raining.
Right.
What's a gallon of water down my back? Big deal.
That's a good life mantra though. What are you going to do when things happen that we're not expecting or we don't like or they catch us off guard? Rather than get mad about it, just keep walking.
Yep.
What are you going to do?
Exactly. One foot in front of the other. Traffic.
How was traffic?
Oh, coming back into the cities, terrible. It's 100 degrees. I-35W is shut down coming north. There's an accident on 35E. There's an accident on Cedar. It's a parking lot. It's 100 degrees. 100 degrees when you're outside is miserable. 100 degrees when you're on a motorcycle with an engine that's probably pushing out a 250 degrees temp off the motor, it's miserable. So again, we talk about looking out for each other. I got two guys that I'm with that are pulling trailers. They're not as nimble, right? They can't just change lanes. So having a plan, where are we going? We're communicating, right? We're taking a detour. We're communicating where we're going. I'm the only guy not pulling a trailer. So I'm kind of in a blocker position. So I can kind of go around them, hold up traffic so they can merge into a different lane, right? So it almost becomes this orchestrated activity and this orchestrated effort to get us to where we need to go.
The amount of teamwork that goes into that, I hadn't thought about that until you started talking about what you're talking about now, where you're like the blocker. So you're going to get in front of traffic so that people the other guys can go in front of you and merge in. The amount of teamwork and communication that has to happen without talking is massive.
Yeah. We had a semi driver. We're looking up at him, coming, he's in the lane next to us and where we want to go. And we're looking out and, kind of point to wanting to jump in the lane. He mashes the brakes. I'm sure that ripple effect went all the way down to Lakeville.
Just that ability to watch out for each other. If there's one lesson that we could take from this conversation, the importance of watching out for one another, whether in any relationship we have, but in all relationships, looking out for the people that you're working beside, working with, is essential, and it can make or break a lot of things.
I agree. This isn't the quote I was looking for, but this really fits in with exactly what we've been talking about as well, about being present in the moment, about enjoying your time off, really focusing that time, enjoying it, being in the moment, absorbing what is happening in your world at that time. The reality is that for any one of us, if something were to happen, if we were to die, our employer would backfill our job tomorrow. And probably have that role filled by the end of the month. Your friends and family, on the other hand, they're gonna miss you forever. The reality is, don't get so busy on making a living that you forget to work on making a life. Making a life. What does that entail? It entails everything we just talked about today. Right? It's enjoying those moments. It's having that camaraderie with your friends. It's watching out for your friends. It's sharing the stories and the laughter around the campfire. It's the preparation for the trip, right? As we're preparing for the trip, hey, what are 2 things on that I should have on my list that I don't, right? We run those checks a couple times on each other before we leave, right? Being prepared, looking out for each other, making that life, enjoying it, enjoying what this country has to offer. So many beautiful sights. Scratching the surface. I want everybody in my circle to experience that. Unfortunately, everybody experiences it differently, right? So you have to find what works for you. I get massive enjoyment out of seeing those sights on a motorcycle, but not everybody is going to. So what's your enjoyment factor? What are you going to do to make your life and live your life and make the most of it?
That's it right there, man.
Why do I have to come up with these drop the mic moments at the end?
It's the best place to put them, man. It's the end. This is the perfect place to wrap up and to call this episode done. It kind of like the last time. It's been awesome to hear the response to the podcast, to hear the feedback, to hear what people have shared, and I think we'd both just like to say how much we appreciate hearing that and how much we appreciate the way everybody's jumped on board with this and kind of become part of this community.
Yeah, and please, if you're getting value out of this conversation, please share it. Share it with others. We greatly appreciate that.
Hey, we hope you enjoyed today's episode of Grit Meets Growth. We have 2 asks for you as we wrap things up today. First of all, if you enjoyed this podcast or you got something out of it today, we'd love to have you subscribe and follow us so that you can get your ear in on more of these conversations. And the second thing we'd love to have you do is if you heard something today that you think could help somebody else or that they need to hear, we just ask you to share the podcast and let this message be magnetic to as many people as possible. So with that, have an awesome day. Make it happen. Get out there, do the work, and let's get after it.